everybody, this is just going to be a really short video on the Peasants War specifically. I wanted to tackle this particular issue on its own. Okay, the Peasants War occurred between 1524 and 1525. There is kind of a harsh reality that comes to pass soon after Luther makes his stand. Not everybody is going to agree with Luther. People are going to go to the scriptures and come out with their own interpretations. And from this point forward, we're going to see that. The Reformation starts to fragment. We get a Reformation in Zurich. We get one in England. We get one in Geneva. Okay, we're going to talk about all these things. And then later, Reformations are all over the place. We get the Anabaptist Reformation. Okay, people are even going to go to Luther's works and come away with things that Luther never intended. And the Peasants' War is one of those instances. All right. First of all, we need to talk about this individual named Thomas Müntzer. He was a follower of Luther, but he ended up being very, very different. He was kind of a prophet of sorts, or maybe a self-proclaimed prophet of sorts is a better way to put it, and he believed that he needed to destroy the wicked. Say what you will about Luther's harsh polemic, his rhetoric, he never wanted to go and actually kill anybody himself, all right? He was not trying to overthrow government structures. He was actually very mindful of temporal authorities, probably because those temporal authorities were keeping him alive, like Elector Frederick the Wise. But anyway, I digress. In fact, I will be teaching a class next year on religion and politics, and we can dive into Luther's kind of ideas on politics. But we're not doing that right now. But I just wanted to sort of highlight those few things. All right, so Müntzer actually comes to lead the Peasants' War, though others probably would have seen this coming. Müntzer had been a pastor in various places. He burned down a church in 1524, and he warned publicly that God's kingdom would overthrow the existing order. All right, first of all, peasants really were oppressed in this time and place, okay? Life was really rough. They had essentially been turned into serfs, which is different than slavery, though probably only marginally so. People are tied to the land, so they could not be bought and sold, but they were not free either, okay? There had been other peasant revolts. This did happen occasionally. There had been an uprising in the south, and it started to spread. Müntzer actually builds an army that was crushed. He was executed, but waves of violence start bubbling up after this. At first, let's talk about Luther's response. At first, he wrote an admonition of peace. Luther condemned the nobility. He agreed that the peasants had just demands. And he really was urging peace. He then traveled around trying to get the peasantry to be peaceful. They didn't appreciate him doing this, and they didn't like his message. And then his protector, Frederick the Wise, died in there. So things are feeling pretty out of control for Luther. So his response is another tract entitled Against the Murderous and Thieving Hordes of Peasants. His words are really violent and cruel here. Meanwhile, the nobility is just slaughtering people, okay? You get a little bit more of this in your book. Luther was criticized for his actions then and now. It's estimated that about 100,000 people were actually killed during this. And that's including men, women, and children, and those who had actually surrendered. Okay, this was pretty close to a strategic catastrophe for Luther. The peasants felt betrayed by him. He had inspired them. The logic conclusion to his writings had led people to revolt. Okay, when you talk about freedom and the priesthood of all believers, these ideas of Christian equality are going to take roots in areas that don't just deal with religion. Think about it for a second. Like, I can be free of the tyranny of the church, but I can't be free from the tyranny of the nobility that is literally bleeding us dry. Okay, for most peasantry, the harshness of the nobility would have absolutely been worse than kind of Luther's ideas of tyranny of the church. Okay. So we can look at these abuses. So kind of the problem is people are saying, so we can look at abuses of power in one area, the religious realm, but not look at them in the other realm. Okay. So some questions arise from this, how much momentum in the German Reformation was lost because of this Peasants' War. Luther wants a revolution in one area of life, but not the other. This is unsatisfying to certain people. And there is evidence that the flood of evangelical literature beginning in 1519 slows a bit after the Peasants' War. And it's been argued that more radical forms of Reformation, such as the Anabaptist, grew in popularity at this time. All right, so next we are going to move and start looking at the Swiss Reformation. And so we can see how Reformation is looking in different contexts. All right, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.